Good afternoon, everybody, or good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whether you are wherever you might be in the world. Now, there's my first stumble of the day, which leads me quite well, I think, into what I'm going to be talking about today, which is the heat. And one of the effects of heat is cognitive issues. But I'll come to that in a moment. So, just to introduce myself to you, if you don't already know, my name is John Quick. I'm an aortic survivor of now nearly 19 years. I had an type A aortic dissection out of the blue and subsequently had a type B dissection. On the day, I had emergency open heart surgery and had a aortic valve replaced and a prosthesis fitted. And the type B dissection was subsequent, and I've been living with that with defensive medication for these subsequent years. So that has led me to changing my life, as it does for many of us. And I'd always been interested in psychology and therapy and began to train in those areas, gaining some qualifications, and started working with foundations and charities, which leads me to be with you today, hopefully able to bring experience from both sides of the fence. One, the therapeutic, the advice of that, the experience of that, but also the experience of being a quite long-term sufferer or survivor, or whatever we want to call it. At the same time, I must remember to ask you to like, subscribe, buy the t-shirts. Joshua and I have just been talking about some new t-shirts. He'll tell you about that later, I'm sure. So today, I'm flying solo. We don't have a guest, but I thought I would talk a little bit about heat, as in hot weather, how to manage it. As you may know, here in Spain, it's been unseasonably hot. Spain has recorded, along with France, its hottest June since records began. And although it's a little bit cooler today, which comes as a huge relief to me, over the last few days, it's been regularly at 40 degrees centigrade, which in old money is 104 Fahrenheit. I don't know about you, but that presents some particular issues for me, some of which I will get into and be very happy to hear your feedback on that. I was just saying to Joshua, almost the overarching theme today is really about common sense. And perhaps I might say, just don't be silly. It's all about being sensible, living within our limits, managing the situation, waiting for the heat to pass, being well prepared for the heat, and going through certain sensible precautions which kind of can help us through very hot weather. But we'll come to the detail of that a little bit. But the most important thing is to stay hydrated, because in hot weather we get dehydrated, and dehydration isn't a good thing because it puts the body under strain. It ends up with the body working too hard, and body loses that capacity to cool. And principally, it does cooling. Our bodies do cooling through sweating, and this is a cooling mechanism that causes sweating as a way of enabling evaporation through the skin. But in order to do that, you have to be hydrated on a regular basis. And most of us, even on an ordinary day, aren't hydrated enough. I know it's something that I've had to address more in these last years, and have really made an attempt to do the boring thing I find of drinking some water, which is what I'm going to do now. About being and staying hydrated, perhaps some of the things to be careful of are alcohol, caffeine, which will dehydrate us, and also tea. Now that's a big hit for me, because being English, I like my tea, especially in the afternoon. and I get to 4 o'clock and I want to have a tea, and the place is really warm and hot. And if I have my tea, I will absolutely start to sweat. It's horrible. So what I end up doing is putting ice cubes in my tea, sticking it in the freezer for a while, going away and coming back. It's not the same, but it's a necessary compromise because it just isn't worth it. I don't know whether that's an age thing as well, whether if I was younger I could drink a hot cup of tea, but again, it's about don't be silly, John. Don't heat yourself up more than you already are. Obvious things as well are
Iced
like
tea is an American staple in the South.
is it? Yeah.
Yes, it is. It is. When I say it's an American staple, uh, people that are in the southern states, they come up to kind of the northern area and they're like, "Yeah, can I get some sweet tea at a restaurant?" And they're like, "We don't have sweetened tea here. You'll have to sweeten it yourself." Like,
And that's interesting because I thought you were, a nation of coffee
oh
drinkers.
no, no. See, coffee is for the morning, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then if you're a coffee drinker, this is one of those weird things. If you're a coffee drinker, you can drink coffee with dinner. I am not a coffee drinker. I drink coffee and I stop drinking caffeine after like 2 o'clock in the afternoon, period.
Mm.
Right? And so, but I know people that'll have a cup of coffee and go to bed 45 minutes later, like that's okay. If
And
I
they
have
manage
a
to sleep.
sip, if I have a sip of coffee, I'm going to be wired for hours. I don't know how they do it.
Mm.
I don't know how they
There are
do
a lot
it.
of people like that. Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I talk to people, and you go through those kind of routines with them, and you point out some basic lifestyle changes, like, oh, the person says, "Oh, I'm not sleeping very well," and you check in what they're doing before they go to sleep, and they're drinking coffee or even tea
Sugar. Just
and
oh, let me
sugar.
let me
Yeah.
get this
Yeah.
ice cream and like why are you taking in a bunch of energy right now?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's back to that, isn't it? Don't be silly. No. Um,
Hold on, I do have a question. Why is drinking water boring?
for me, um, I mean, it isn't really. It's just I use a silly word, but how can drinking water be boring? It's just, I suppose, I'm not particularly attracted to the taste,
Right
and
now,
that's
I agree with you. I will fill up like I drink gulps of water. Like it's like gulps. I'm not drinking it for pleasure. I'm not drinking it for taste. I'm not sipping it. It's not a fine whiskey or a wine. I am
mm,
like, let me get this part out of the way. Just gulp, gulp, gulp. Almost like shooting beer. Gulp, gulp, gulp. Because I don't particularly enjoy the flavor of beer either.
mm.
Right?
So do you see it as something you kind of have to do? So you kind of
Oh
gulp
yeah.
it down and
Oh yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's that kind of thing. It's a bit like brushing your teeth or something, isn't
Yeah.
it? Just get the water inside you.
And the earlier you
Yeah.
can do it in the day, the better. Like the
Mm,
earlier you can begin flushing your system, the better. Because that's the
yeah.
other thing that it does, right? Like you when you first wake up, your body's got all kinds of enzymes floating through it. And as you get moving and start moving through the day, all of that stuff starts to process again. Water helps push that all along through
Mm,
every one of your vital organs, all the way through. It's just
yeah.
completely nourishing. And the sooner you do it, the better.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's
Yeah.
watching the plants outside in this kind of weather. And if I forget to if I water them, say every 24 hours, if I leave it till 36, I see these wilted plants, looking at me, kind of
Mm-hmm.
going, how can you do this to me?
Oh, yeah.
They need that water as we do.
And
Yeah.
coffee.
So, dehydration is a form of wilting, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. I agree.
So now beginning to sort of zoom in a little bit on kind of things that might be more specific to this kind of condition. Well, I've said it many times. I really, really value swimming. That was a massive part of my rehabilitation. I'm fortunate where I am. We've got a fabulous pool, a minute away down in the gardens. And I've swum today and I feel so much better for it. And of course, I cool down. although it has been so hot that it's kind of like a bit like a bath at the moment. But so what? Um, then there's the question of sunbathing. Uh, Difficult one. So let me point out straight away, if you are post dissection and you've had open heart surgery and you have the scar, you shouldn't be exposing yourself to sun on that scar for at least 2 years, because that skin is new. So that's a kind of golden rule. One might argue these days, well, who needs to sunbathe anyway? I'm a lot more cautious than I used to be. I use a kind of factor 50, but that's also because I'm from the north of Europe, English Irish, and I'm currently in a country, down by the Mediterranean, which can be completely hot. So I don't have the genetics or the DNA for this. And obviously, you don't have to be a genius to reason what I'm trying to be careful about
Mm-hmm.
there. But specifically, I've found, being out in the sun with this condition, it doesn't take long for me to just not feel very comfortable from my chest. And I specifically notice and feel that the titanium valve, which is a metal after all, is actually kind of getting hotter. And there's something in me, I've often talked about this, that my valve is like a rabbit inside me. It kind of thumps its tail, and one of the advantages of having this valve is like it can be a kind of early warning signal. So I notice if I'm a bit nervous about something or a bit stressed, sometimes I'll feel it thumping, and the same thing happens when I'm getting too hot. Seems to me, John, don't push it. Again, listen to your body. So I will go out into the sun, for short periods of time when I'm swimming and things like that, but I don't really overexpose myself to the sun for that reason. Uh, okay, so then we come to the issue, which I know that we all have to manage, of kind of exertion in this kind of weather. So I thought again it'd be the most useful thing I can do here, because I know I'm talking about a very general kind of topic, is talk about really my own experience. And yesterday was a classic example where I was doing some work around the house. Then there was a power cut. And I've been looking at my fridge for the last few days and noticing it's not working very well, turning up the thermostat. And then I had a look at the back panel covered in ice, noticed things weren't cooling. And I thought, I need to defrost this fridge. And power cut, I thought, right now. So I sort of leapt in, pulled all of the things out of the fridge, which in itself, was quite a task, bending down, getting out all of these trays. Then I decided to speed the process up, I'd get the hairdryer on it. So I was kind of adding heat in to the situation. And then, of course, in for a penny, in for a pound. Now that I've got all the trays and everything out, I start to clean them all. And I'm very pleased with myself up to this point, because it's defrosting away and it's all, I'm chucking the ice into the sink. And then I just begin to notice how much I'm sweating. And I'm thinking, this heat's very hot outside, haven't got, aircon, the fans aren't working. I'm just overdoing it a little bit. And it's always, I think, for all of us, perhaps, it's the same with sport and exercise. Sometimes it's not until you cross that limit, you kind of think, oh, I have to back off. And then there's that kind of thing, oh, I've overdone it. And the anxiety begins. But it is very difficult. I mean, how do we know? Because there are things we need to do. I had to defrost the fridge. So then what I try to do is, you know, again, just be sensible with myself and just say, right, stop. Because it can be a bit kind of compulsive, I find, to finish those kind of things, get it done. And I like to finish it. I like to do it well. So, basic things, go and sit down, have some water, get some wet towels. The other symptom I notice most for myself, and I've mentioned this before. The warning sign for me is that my chest just begins to feel a little bit uncomfortable. And I can't really find a vocabulary for it, but it's not even specifically that it feels tight, but it just kind of feels wrong. It doesn't, something's not sitting right. And then I've noticed psychologically in the past, and even that happened a little bit yesterday, because of that sense of being overheated and kind of wrong, I noticed the anxiety level beginning to rise, which yesterday made me take my heart rate. And that surprised me. It was, 60. I expected it to be higher. Don't quite know why that was. And then kind of once I'd done that, I kind of went through this routine of saying, okay, so this is what's happening. You're feeling a bit anxious about this because you're feeling uncomfortable. The only thing I can do is go into that routine of kind of acceptance. And in a way, what I try to do now these days with that is I just kind of do a kind of rain check with myself and think, this is my body. This is the only body I've got. I've got to trust it and I've just got to wait it out. And I'm going to do myself no favors by just kind of getting into anticipatory anxiety by going, oh God, my chest feels a bit tight and, the valve feels too hot. What am I going to do about it? And then you could be on that kind of treadmill of worry. The point struck me today actually that what can we really do in these situations apart from trust our bodies? And we don't do it enough. But actually, the truth is, it's the only body we've got. It's not like we can go and get another. And that's the point. And one has to be careful that one's not trying to find an alternative in those situations of feeling hot and bothered or a little bit panicky. No, John, you are hot and bothered. This is where you are. This is your body. There isn't an alternative. You better get on and be with it. So I tried to do that, sat there, and I really found that helped for me. And I began to kind of calm. And once again, as I should know after all of these years, it passed. And here I am with you.
Does the
So,
duration of that passing, has that changed over time? Like, does it sometimes just last quite long? Does sometimes it recognize
uh,
that you being mindful about it start to ease it?
that's a really good question, Josh. I think yes. I think when in the early years, I because it was kind of new, what's happening? Where's this taking me? I'm not used to these feelings. Something's going wrong. That could spiral. That would last longer. I think now. I think that one has to factor in the heat yesterday. That might have been slightly out of my hands. If it's very hot, it's not going to cool down necessarily because I've asked it to. Um, outside the sun. But I do think, yes, I've become more seasoned, perhaps, at managing it and being mindful, as you say. Good word.
Do you have these issues close to bedtime sometimes?
Do I have what? Sorry.
Do you have some of this anxiety? Like, does your heart start to or your chest get tight like close to bedtime sometimes? Does this ever happen when you're right preparing for bed? I'm curious about
Um,
an underlying volume of stress or anxiety that you're just accustomed to.
well, I mentioned before, one of my issues has been arrhythmia, and I
Yes.
see that as being, that comes from a tightened up diaphragm pushing up on the chest, which then causes. I don't actually think it's like. I think there is a cause of my arrhythmia, and that's the tight diaphragm, that stress. So if I'm in that kind of state, and I'm happy to say again, I would say that's declined over the last few years because generally speaking, I think I've become better at managing my stress, and certain things have changed in my own life circumstances. But if it's there, I find, as I said before, the line going from standing or sitting into a horizontal position can be difficult at first to get comfortable to calm the chest down. Oh, the other thing I also meant to mention, which is pure common sense, and I'm sure nobody really needs me to say it, but is you know if it's going to be a hot day, by about 11 in the morning, to be closing the windows, to be pulling the shutters down, to be closing the curtains. Some people might think, oh, well, that's just going to trap the heat in, but no, you don't want the heat coming in through the glass. And blinds, like we have here, are quite a good way of kind of creating a barrier, because they're going to reflect the sun back, being white.
The amount of people that can only stand sunlight, right? I'm one of those people. Like, I don't use lights in the house. It's either the sunlight or it's dark out and now I suffer lights for a few hours.
Oh, you're some sort of medievalist
It's
and
just
going back. You would have been
weird.
better in the Middle Ages.
It's just weird.
You don't really like having the lights on.
So my entire career has been, information technology, basements, large air conditioning, humming, frozen 69-degree, temperature with giant glowing lights on 24 hours a day, right? And
Mm.
so one day, uh, I looked at my staff, my group of people, and I was like, listen, as soon as management is out of here, I'm cutting most of the lights. And everybody looked at me like I was crazy. And I was like, now there are lights underneath everybody's desk. If you need more light, add more light. And at 6:15, I called down to the security guards and I was like, is so and so gone? And he's like, yeah, he just left. I was like, okay, thanks. And then I cut the lights. And I mean, you could
So, you're,
hear the
so you're
audible
a creature of the
sigh.
darkness, are you,
No, no, no. But
Joshua?
you could hear everybody in the network operations center just sigh in relief, just like, oh, thanks for that. It's a lot of light. It's a lot of light, and you're already staring into a giant flashlight to get your work done. To me, it's just
Yeah.
too much light all the way around.
Mm.
Yeah.
And does that affect you physically as well?
I mean, other than making my eyes tired, like that was the big thing. I stopped getting we had a couple people talk about because they weren't used to working after 9 o'clock. I'm sorry, after 5 o'clock, right? When you go into 24-hour shift work, you have to be willing to work from 2 p.m. to 10 p.m. And some people they're like, that's family time. There's zero possibility I'm going to work from 6 o'clock to 10 p.m. I get it. That's fine. It's not for everybody. But then sometimes you have to fill in somebody's shift. And so you get to learn, like, oh, wow, these people aren't flooded with light 8 hours a day, all day long, right? This is a
Mm.
part of their day where the lights are dimmer, they're in their house, they're just, the whole thing is much more calming. And the thing is that at 6 o'clock in the morning, those lights are bright. And part of the reason is because everybody's tired and they're using the light to force you to stay alert. It's hard to take a
Mm.
nap when you're being bathed in light, right?
Yeah.
And so,
Yeah.
but at the end of your day, or close to when it's coming up for your afternoon or early evening meal time, the sun's going down, and so that's what I
Mm.
try to. I guess that's what it is. It's like at this point in time, it should be a little bit less bright in the workplace. So night shift would show up, and the lights would be off, and they would be like, "This is what I'm talking about," because those people are crazy.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, no. For me, it's natural light or no light at all.
Do we have anybody joining us?
Now everybody's quiet. Everybody's
They're
quiet.
all
I put some links in there for anonymous
hiding. They're all
questions.
hiding from the heat.
Yeah,
Yeah.
summertime, summertime,
Yeah.
and it goes that way.
So how do you in the heat then, Joshua?
I'm allergic to outside, so I don't go out there. And I live right across the street. I guess it's 2 streets away that are the foothills to the Catoctin Mountains, and there are things in there Like we've got bear spottings, we've got bobcat spottings, and stuff like that. And so I, true to human nature, stay in the cave.
So should we just run through the main points again there, and then
For
we
sure,
close?
for sure.
Yeah. So we really talked about common sense, weren't we? Importance of staying dehydrated, and also
Not staying hydrated.
staying hydrated. Thank you. Um, see that now, that's another thing I forgot to mention. I definitely noticed some cognitive slippage
When it's hot.
about my. Oh yes,
Yeah.
and I just generally kind of less inclination to do things. The energy is
Mm,
just kind of slower, and I find that sometimes that affects my speech. I'm kind of not quite so on thoughts as I normally be.
mm.
Um, so yes, again, I think in this kind of condition, the most important thing is that we just accept and sort of wait out the heat. That's all we can do, and not get too frustrated with ourselves. Um, not it's not going to change for us. Why expend the energy on getting frustrated? And like I said about, my fridge story, being trying not to cross one's limit of what the body can do. But if we do, okay, so we then have to deal with it. You're laughing, smiling.
Christina says, "I'm here. I'm just listening."
Ah, okay.
She's our resident cowgirl. She's probably dripping in the Texas heat, tending her
Maybe.
few cows.
Yes.
Yeah, she runs a dairy farm.
Oh,
Mm-hmm.
so
So
yes,
hydrate,
and then
Christina. Obviously, hydrate.
yeah. And as I always say, swim if you can. And also, yes, take a cold shower. That's a
Mm.
great way to cool down. That was another thing I did yesterday, and again felt much better because of it. Okay,
Right on. Keep it
so we'll
simple.
close there.
Long
Thank you very
days
much to
can't
everybody
stay
for listening.
focused, she says.
Who says that?
Christina, long days can't stay focused. You were just
Yeah,
talking about some of the mental hits when it gets pretty hot.
yeah.
Yeah, I believe you.
Even talking to you now, I can feel my body's warmed up. Yeah, just from the exertion of it.
I have that
Yeah.
effect on people.
Okay, bye everybody.
Bye, everybody.